All right, welcome everybody to the Denver One Water Joint One Water Advisory Group and Community Workshop. We're right at 31 minutes past the hour here, so we're going to go ahead and get started while a few more people still enter into our waiting room. We've got a full agenda tonight, so we're going to jump right into it. Thank you all for being here, and we're going to take a quick look at our One Water planning process in just a minute. So the purpose of the meeting tonight is really to introduce One Water. Again, it's been a while since the plan has been discussed in the broader view of the public. So we've been hard at work developing a draft plan that we're going to present to you tonight in three parts. The first part is we're going to look at what is One Water and how is the plan developed as we discuss that in part two of the meeting, and then look at the roadmap for where we go from here. And the quick spoiler alert, because One Water is a complex topic involving a lot of different agencies and disciplines, but the spoiler alert is that it's all one water. It's all connected. It's all part of one system, from rainwater and stormwater to surface water and groundwater to recycled water, drinking water, and wastewater. And it's all connected in one integrated system that really starts at the global level with our entire global climate and all the water that's connected, especially as we're looking at the state and the national level with the news that everybody I'm sure has been seeing around the Colorado River. It's all connected, especially here as a headwaters state. At the city and regional level, there's a lot more control, and that's what we're going to be looking at tonight in the draft One Water plan, and then also down at that neighborhood level. So the agenda for tonight, we're already well into part one for introductions. We're going to be introducing our core planning team here in just a moment. And then we're going to get into a quick update on the planning process, history and definition of One Water, the vision and goals, and the process and schedule, as well as a summary of community priorities that will be interpreted into the draft One Water plan. That's where the fun starts in part two of the meeting. We're going to review the draft plan. And then we're going to look at where we go from here in terms of the plan input that we're seeking right now. And there you'll see there are 4 breaks for Q&A during the meeting. So what you'll be able to do is anytime during the meeting, you can submit your questions to the host via the chat. And when we get to the Q&As, if you would like to go live, indicate that by raising your virtual hand and we'll unmute you. And like I said, we've got 4 points for Q&A. So we'll have plenty of time to get into all of your questions tonight. So to introduce the team, the strength of the Denver One Water program is really in the partnership, and it's a unique coalition of water resource agencies that are partnering to develop this plan, from Denver Water and a number of divisions and groups within the city and county of Denver to Metro Wastewater Reclamation District, the Mile High Flood District, the Greenway Foundation and the Water Connection, and the Colorado Water Conservation Board. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave Jula with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Dave Jula with DOTI, formerly Public Works. And we plan, design, and construct infrastructure across the city to serve our constituents. And from a water perspective, that's the stormwater, the pipes that convey stormwater that the streets can't handle. We work with our partner Mile High Flood District, which we'll get into in a little bit, on our waterways in the South Platte River and improvements in there. And that's DOTI's role in this. And I'll hand it over to Sarah for CPD.
Hi, so I'm Sarah Corris with Community Planning and Development, and our department is responsible for the visionary city planning and ensuring safe, responsible, sustainable building. So essentially, we also help regulate development and ensure that we're doing appropriate and thoughtful development throughout the city. I'll pass it off to Parks.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Levesque with Denver Parks and Recreation. Denver Parks and Recreation oversees Denver's urban and mountain parks, which include waterways and lakes, as well as trails, recreation centers, and trees. And the One Water plan is important to our mission of using resources wisely in order to maintain the health of our city and residents. And I'll hand it over to Liz.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Babcock with Denver's Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. We're a relatively new office in the city, and our purpose is to really ensure that Denver is planning for a climate safe future for all of our people. We want to make sure that we're being good stewards of our natural resources, as well as making sure that we're reducing our impact on air quality, all of the issues that we might have in our region where we have an environmental impact. We're addressing those, and we're trying to plan for the changes that we are already experiencing as a result of the climate crisis here in Denver. So we're happy to be a part of this process, and I will turn it over to Public Health and Environment.
Yeah, and I'm going to fill in for John Novick. He is on vacation this week, so lucky him. But the Department of Public Health and Environment are focusing on the environmental aspects of our city and how they affect our community. And why this whole thing matters to the city of Denver is, as Liz just mentioned, the uncertain future of climate change, our semi-arid nature of our limited water resources, and the unprecedented growth that we've experienced over the past years are all going to put a strain on this finite resource that's so valuable to life. And so we just really see the value in taking a bigger, holistic approach to managing that resource. And I think I'll hand it off to the Mile High Flood District.
And if Barb Chungtua, I don't know if Barb, are you on? Are you with us? And Barb, just elbow me aside if you join later, but I'll just quickly introduce Mile High Flood District. They're the agency tasked with protecting people, property, and the environment through the preservation, mitigation, and education of our stormwater resources. And although I don't think Barb could join us tonight, One Water matters to Mile High Flood because their mission is really creating one space that is high value while remaining low maintenance as it relates to integrating the water cycle. So with that, Devin, want to introduce the Greenway Foundation and Water Connection.
Yep, thanks, Miles. I'm Devin Buckles, Director of the Water Connection, which is the policy and water resources arm of the Greenway Foundation. You can see here on the slide some of the projects, some of the things that we are engaged in doing and caring about. The concept of One Water, and this plan in particular, is important to us because we really see it as a step toward a healthier and more sustainable watershed. We also hope it elevates water to the same level of importance as our other resource areas like energy. And we're really excited to be helping One Water take hold here in Denver because we're hopeful it may reduce or eliminate the negative impacts which sometimes show up in our urban waterways and ecosystems from decisions that are made in a siloed manner. So our role in this plan has been twofold. One, we were the recipient of the grant from the Colorado Water Conservation Board. So thank you, CWCB, for funding this effort. And then also we've been on the core planning team with these other agencies. So thank you so much. We're looking forward to hearing from you tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Devin. And Jeff.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Terrell. I'm the manager of water efficiency with Denver Water. And along with my colleague, Ty Boreski, we've been part of the Denver One Water team. And Denver Water is the oldest and largest water utility in the state. We provide drinking water, raw water, and recycled water to over 1.5 million people in the metro area. As an organization, we're always seeking ways to be more efficient with our water use and protect our water supplies. And when it comes to One Water, we want to lead by example. Recently, we redeveloped our campus and integrated One Water elements such as decentralized blackwater systems, rainwater harvesting, and drought-tolerant landscaping into that new campus. And we're grateful to be part of this regional initiative with such great partners as the people here, and look forward to your discussion tonight.
Thanks, Jeff. And our next partner, the Metro Wastewater Reclamation District, could not join us here tonight, but they have been actively engaged throughout the process and wanted us to convey how important One Water is to them as a critical part of the water cycle. The Metro Wastewater Reclamation District provides wastewater treatment to 60 local municipalities and sanitation districts within the Denver metropolitan area, and they serve about 2 million people regionally. In addition to providing clean water, The district is also an innovative leader in the wastewater treatment industry, and they're pioneering advancements in wastewater treatment. And One Water is a priority for the district because One Water supports Metro's strategic mission to protect the region's health and environment by cleaning water and recovering resources. We and the Metro District values creating collaborative relationships on large infrastructure projects with stakeholders throughout the water cycle. And last but certainly not least, Kevin with CWCB.
Hey, thanks, Miles. Hi, I'm Kevin Rady. I'm the Senior Water Conservation Specialist for the state of Colorado at the CWCB, Colorado Water Conservation Board. And I'll let you just read these things here, but really what it boils down to is we're the policy and planning agency for the state of Colorado. So we're looking out for a lot of different ways to conserve water and to manage water across the state. And one of those, as you can see here, is the Colorado Water Plan. And as we're updating it right now, we're right in the middle of that. We're beginning to write sections of it. We've been doing some outreach there. And this seemed like a really important part to look at in terms of where water planning and land use planning intersect. And it's a really good way to kind of demonstrate that and understand how these things are affected by each other. So we're always looking for new avenues to manage water better, more efficiently at the state level. And this seemed like a really great project to be part of and help fund. And hopefully it kind of gets us to whittling away at the shortages that we're looking at in the near future and the far future. So glad you guys could make it tonight to participate in this meeting and looking forward to having a good conversation. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. And we also want to recognize our One Water Advisory Group. The One Water Advisory Group played a critical role, especially early on in the process, in informing the planning and helping with community outreach. As you can see here, there's a number of diverse organizations represented. More than 60 were invited. We had about 30 or so who were participating very regularly in the process. And I do want to recognize the OWAG members that we have RSVP'd here tonight. Brianna Federico from the Colorado Watershed Assembly, representing and standing in for Casey Davenhill with Cherry Creek Stewardship Partners. Perry Burnap with the Mayor's Bicycling Advisory Committee. And Perry was also involved in Blueprint and climate change for the city and county of Denver. Colorado Trout Unlimited and John Covert. The Downtown Denver Partnership and Beth Moisky. Metro Basin Roundtable, Barb Biggs. And Western Resource Advocates, John Bergeron. And also the Department of Local Affairs, Dola and Christy Wiseman. And any OWAG members, if I missed you, I apologize. If we were just going off RSVPs and who we could see. So give us a chat if I missed anyone, and we'll give you a shout out a little bit later in the presentation. But we couldn't have been embarking upon this ambitious plan and vision for One Water in Denver without the broader community and also our key One Water Advisory Group partners. So without any further ado, let's get into the planning process and a quick update on what we've been doing since our last meeting. And Dave Jula with the City and County of Denver is going to kick us off.
Yeah, so as we've talked about in previous meetings, historically, utilities, jurisdictions, all the players in the water area in the region have focused on their specific silos and their responsibilities, and that's was the way it used to be, and this is the opportunity to start bringing those things together to find efficiencies and where we can help each other and come up with mutual beneficial goals that we're all working towards. There's just lots of opportunity to share resources and ideas and best practices so that we can all be better. I mean, all the entities that we have participating in this plan, and they're shown here, have a long history of working together very well. It's not that there was that there weren't collaboration between these groups. This is just more of an opportunity to formalize that, create a framework and a formal group that is looking at One Water across the region to make us all better at our jobs. Next. So if you're not aware how it works in the Denver region, the roles are, as we kind of covered with everybody's overview, but Denver Water provides us our drinking water, and does recycled and does conservation and water efficiencies and those types of technologies and promotes those, and has a strong outreach component. Metro Wastewater treats our wastewater, the sanitary systems. Mile High Flood District is a really great partner that was created after the massive 1965 floods on the South Platte River that caused, I think in today's dollars, it's like $2 billion in damages there. And they help us with managing stormwater, urban flooding, and also riverine flooding from our waterways. And then also created in the wake of the 1965 flood was the Greenway Foundation and their component, the Water Connection, that is a nonprofit that's just been a great steward of our waterways and clean water and making an amenity for citizens of the region. And then the city and county of Denver has the oversight of working on stormwater and our waterways and protecting and the infrastructure that supports those things. And I'll hand it over to Devin to continue on.
Thanks, Dave. So as Dave mentioned, there's a lot of different ways you can look at One Water, and people have their varied interpretations of exactly what that means. So when we began this journey on the One Water planning process, we all realized we really needed to be on the same page regarding what we're talking about. It just seemed like a really good idea. So after considering a number of different descriptors and aspects of One Water, we settled on adopting the Water Research Foundation's definition of One Water, which you see here on the slide below the wordle. So WRF says One Water is an integrated planning and implementation approach to managing finite water resources for long-term resilience and reliability, meeting both community and ecosystem needs. So we took that and ran with it. And you can go to the next slide. The next thing you might ask is, like, why do we need this plan? Why do we even need to do this? And some of you may know that we do have a Colorado water plan that Kevin Rady spoke about earlier in this meeting. Colorado State Water Plan was completed in 2015. So the timing for the process that we're undertaking here with the One Water Plan is great because they're updating the state water plan. And there's also an update process going on for the basin implementation plan for each basin in the state. So we can sort of roll up some of the things that we're learning here and some of the recommendations and the work we've done into the work that they're doing on the statewide plan. So great timing. And specifically for our region, the state water plan projects a shortfall of up to 560,000 acre feet by 2050. So an acre foot of water is the amount of water needed to cover an acre of land 1 foot deep. So it's just a standard unit of measure. The South Platte Basin, as many of you may know, is home to 80% of the state's population. And it also provides 80% of the state's economic and tax base. So by 2050, the population in this basin is expected to increase from about 3.8 million to 6 million. And that's an old figure, so it's probably even higher now. The basin is challenged with some of the greatest projected supply gap of any of Colorado's river basins that were evaluated in the state water plan. So along with this growth, we're also experiencing, as many of you know, this dramatic climate change. And some of that's just visible right outside the window. So at this time last year, when we were having a meeting on this plan, we had just finished, I think it was the fourth of 4 of the largest wildfires in the state's history, which all happened last year. So, I mean, that sends a pretty clear message to us that we need to start paying attention to our water resources, which really originate in those watersheds and those forested areas. So, and then here in the city, we've experienced a lack of uniform and enforceable water and land use policies, as we've learned as we go through this evaluation. And we've also had a history, as we mentioned, of siloed decisions that impact our water resources. And some of those silos, they come from structural, institutional conditions. And so that needs to be kind of looked at. But some of that's just really in institutions, and some of it's cultural and the cultural practices that evolve over time. You can go to the next slide. So there are a lot of other drivers we've considered as, that have brought us to doing this one water plan. As we mentioned before, it's our goal to elevate water's visibility and its standing relative to other critical resources. I mean, I think water for the most part is invisible. If it works, you turn on the tap in the morning, your shower works, you know, as long as everything works, then it's quiet and you don't think about it. But you hear a lot more, especially in the media, about energy resources. And we really want to, it's not a matter of diminishing the importance or the value of the other resources at all. It's about just raising water up to the same level. So we pay more attention to it and we have the conversations that can help encourage good management of that precious resource. We're also aiming to reduce negative impacts from decisions that have been made in silos and strengthen relationships for holistic and multi-benefit solutions to our water challenges. And then the key to this plan really is pivoting from business as usual. And this is something that we're hoping not just to do as planning team members and not just to do as the entities that are coming together to build this plan, but this pivot and this shift in thinking and really needs to happen within the community. And in fact, it works best if it originates in the community and reflects back up to these institutions. So keep that in mind as we move forward with this roadmap that we're going to lay out for you this evening. We also want to support opportunities for a water resilient future and improve urban livability, equity, and above all, social justice, because water is a fundamental human need. So the benefits of One Water, I think we've pretty much outlined those, and these are some of the areas that we've talked about: agency coordination, predictable, implementable water and land use policies, economic development, collaboration, environmental stewardship, and a unified vision. But you know what this slide doesn't show, I think, is the connection points between all those things. And One Water is really distinguished from other approaches to just plain old water management in those connections. It really focuses on those nexus points so that we're talking about multi-beneficial projects and leveraging resources. And so I want you not to just focus on the rusty and the gray and the yellow and the teal and the gray, you know, those aren't just individual benefits. One Water is really talking about looking at the intersections between those things. And now, let's see, I think I turn it over to John and he can tell you more about this roadmap we've put together.
Yeah, that's right. So this is an overview of the process that we've been undertaking to develop the plan. We started with the envision phase and the 4 phases that you see up at the top there as we progress through here. But starting with the envision phase, we really tried to lay out what this plan could do for water management in Denver, both in terms of how we manage it now and what we can forecast into the future. And then we started, as we progressed through the second half of 2020, started exploring different ways that water is already managed, some of the policies that are in place now to help us manage water in Denver and within the boundaries of the city and county of Denver. And then in parallel with that, started developing different ways that we could address that. What are some of the policy needs? What are some of the strategies that we can employ? And really all pointed towards 5 goals that we'll go through in a few moments. Shaping what the One Water Plan is all about. And then throughout this, we've been sharing the results of this and soliciting input from groups like this, the One Water Advisory Group, and the community at large through the process shown at the lower portion of the slide here. So project coordination workshops consisted of a number of kind of internal team meetings as well, but what we're highlighting here is the engagement process where we started with the One Water Advisory Group meetings back in August of last year, and had a second One Water Advisory Group meeting in November. And then in the middle of that, we had community meeting 1 in October, where we solicited input about kind of what the needs and opportunities are. We conducted a public survey over the course of the last winter, had that open for a couple of months. Steve is going to go through that in a couple minutes here, and really tried to get the pulse of what we could do and need to do with water management in Denver, what some of those opportunities are. And all of that then led us up as we moved through the remainder of the develop phase to where we're at now, sharing some of the results and the things that we've come up with from this process at the joint meeting of the One Water Advisory Group and the community meeting as well. Moving forward, then Miles is going to talk us through some initial feedback. Miles?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned earlier, when we were looking at the agenda, we've got 4 of these discussion zones tonight. So if you want to submit any questions to the host via the chat, please do that now if you haven't already. And to give you a second to think about your questions, we do have a quick live poll that we're going to pull up really quickly. And the polling question is, do you think more education is needed about the One Water concept among the public at large? And we know for those of you who made the time commitment to be here tonight, we expect you're a pretty savvy crowd and you've probably been tracking the One Water process. So we're asking more about the general public at large. How much more education do you think is needed? And it looks like the early returns are coming in. We've got 60% of you voting so far, and resoundingly 95% say more education is needed so far. So let's, and that number is only increasing now. So let's give it one more minute. We'll take a look at the final returns, but I think it's safe to say that when we close the polls, it's a landslide victory for yes, more education is needed. And Sid, I think we've got about 75% in, so let's close the poll here and show those results. So as you can see, 96% said yes. No one said no, which is very telling, and only one person, 4%, was unsure about that. So that only confirms what we're going to be talking about here in the next section. But before we get to that, Sid, do we have any questions that have come through in the chat?
At the moment, there have not been any questions yet in the chat, but if you do have questions, please feel free to send me directly, and we can either I can either ask them myself, or I can unmute and go ahead and ask the question with the group.
Thanks, Sid. And we've got 3 other spots to pause for Q&A. So we'll keep moving and stay on agenda here. One frequently asked question that we do tend to get a lot about this process is, how will the One Water program and Denver One Water specifically impact my day-to-day life? And the short answer is, really, it won't. All the partner entities remain independent, sovereign entities whose business as usual will continue, hopefully with the lens of One Water in front of them. But your interface with your water bill, your stormwater bill, your wastewater, all of that really does remain the same. This is setting the stage for how we think about managing water in a more integrated way, where agencies are collaborating more. For the individual level, hopefully what this does is create more awareness, more education in how we talk about water as a finite and very important resource. So the outreach and the education is central to this, and is what we are going to take a look at here in a summary of our community survey. So Steve, why don't you tell us a little bit about the survey we did last year?
Terrific. Thank you, Miles. As both Miles and John mentioned, we've had a number of ways we've gathered public input into this plan. Public input for something like this that touches so much of the metro area and some in our quality of life. Public input is obviously critically important. And so Miles and John both talked about the OWAG. John mentioned the community meetings we've had and the other mechanisms we've had. One of the ways we did it, though, was through this survey. And if you go to the next slide, this survey was sent out in a number of ways. We had terrific response, frankly. 794 people completed the survey. It was open, as John mentioned, for a little over 2 months, 2.5 months. And so we were really pleased to see that kind of turnout and response rate. It was distributed citywide through the registered neighborhood organizations, through the business improvement districts, through the core planning team website, social media, e-newsletters. So again, we were really happy with that survey response. This gives you a sense of the geographic distribution of the participants who responded. We got 90 plus different zip codes. The highest concentration, not surprisingly, was in the Denver metro area, where we had significant metro area participation. This is a little color-coded map that shows the concentration of where the responses were really concentrated. Again, Denver and Denver metro area, but very good response from participants on this. And we learned a lot from this. One of the key things we learned, and this really is no surprise, I think if we took this now, we might even see this number higher, but we are worried about our water future. 72% said they were worried or very worried. And like I said, given today's circumstances with climate in the West and what have you, that number, I wouldn't be surprised if we asked it today if that number would be higher. Our biggest concern is climate change. 35.22% of folks responded that that was their number one concern. The second was growth, and the third was followed closely by drought. So that gives you a good sense of where people's heads are. Most of us think one water plan can help address some of those concerns. 55% felt that way. 40% said that they were unsure. And I think that that is reflective of what we just learned in that quick survey that Miles has conducted, that there's a lack of knowledge and understanding about what this means. And so that's, I think, a challenge for us going forward. But the key point here is that a one water plan, people think that it can help ensure a better and more secure water future for the metro area and for the region. Next slide. These are the key takeaways and themes of about what people thought would be most important outcomes from a one water plan. Providing high quality, clean drinking water was the number one. Managing water as efficiently as possible was second. Reducing vulnerability to drought and other threats. You can see the list here: enhancing the environment, equitable rates and affordability for all, managing flood risk, and then finally enhanced recreation opportunities. This gives you a good sense of what the public's thinking about what's most important for the outcomes of this. And then this is also more about what the community is looking for, more that they want to see as results. More water is conserved and reused, an enhanced environment, improved water quality for rivers and streams, more sustainable growth and land use policy, a tool for addressing the impacts of climate change, equitable rates and affordability for all, enhanced water-based recreation and green space and parks, supporting a healthy economy, and finally, enhanced ability to manage risks from floods. So that those gave us some really good insights into what people in the community, what the community's feeling about this. These were our conclusions. Again, high level of concern for our water future, strong perception that a one water plan can help. Clearly, a one water approach is a new and complex concept, and so a significant percentage of the community wants to know more through ongoing public education and outreach. So with that, I think I'm turning it back to Miles.
Absolutely, Stephen. That's a great summary on what we heard from the community. And we want to take one more second here just to pause. We've been sharing a lot of information with you, for the past 35 minutes here. So Sid, any questions coming in via the chat?
Yeah, we actually have had a few. The first one asks, has there been any discussion on how to create curriculum or engagements about one water in this project with Denver schools? And they followed to say that it seems like a good opportunity to reach the public and teach kids about water issues, and that this project could also tie into ongoing statewide water education action plan discussions.
Absolutely, that's a great conversation. And amongst the core planning team and our One Water Advisory Group, that has been a key issue, is sort of now that the plan has been developed and that vision has been established and we're seeking feedback on it, what are those opportunities to coordinate with our community partners at the state level and also at the local level, like you mentioned, Denver Public Schools, and integrate that curriculum. And Devin, I'm really curious. I know the water connection that's central to the mission of the water connection. And I know you have a lot of really good curriculum aimed at education. So I'm curious your thoughts as a member of the core planning team.
Yeah, thanks, Miles. I mean, absolutely, education is part of what we do and who we are. I would say that we have another arm of the Greenway Foundation that works specifically with K through 12, and certainly they're already talking. I mean, they talk in all their curriculum about water resources, but now we can begin to integrate some messages about One Water into it's called the SPRE program, South Platte River Environmental Education, and ours is just one of several programs in the metro area that can begin to message this out to our school children. And then the water connection focuses a little more on the higher education realm, working with universities and colleges throughout the state, as well as professionals. So we do engage in extensive outreach and intend to continue that specifically around One Water. If you have ideas on how, I would welcome them. So feel free to reach out to me and send your thoughts on how to reach out to people with messaging on this topic. Thank you.
And any other comments from the core planning team members? And the importance of education and outreach certainly is going to be a big focus as this plan moves forward. I do want to point out on the One Water Advisory Group too, that Metro State University actually has the One World, One Water Center that's been involved in the planning process and is certainly, focused on education and, really One Water specifically. So there are a lot of very strong partners that exist within the Denver metro region today. And as we move forward, strengthening those partnerships to understand the potential of One Water is going to be critically important. So Sid, what other questions do we have?
Absolutely. And as a quick follow-up, the same respondent just said that, Water Education Colorado has a great network of educators, just as a side comment. We had another question come in a little bit earlier, and they asked specifically, how about the new Denver Department of Watershed Protection and Restoration? This is a little bit earlier on in the presentation.
That's a good question that I'm going to maybe refer to some of our City and County of Denver partners on. Dave, I don't know if you're familiar with that group.
No, I'm not familiar with that group.
Sid, could you repeat the name of that group one more time for me?
Yeah, they asked the Denver Department of Watershed Protection and Restoration.
And
is that
any of our other?
It sounds like maybe they're proposing it as a new agency. Because there's definitely not one in City and County of Denver right, currently.
Yeah, any of the other core planning team members have any insight into that entity or potential entity?
Well, Miles, I think certainly aspects of that are covered by the Department of Public Health and Environment already, as well as the newer Climate Action, Sustainability and Resiliency Office as well. So those functions may be happening, but just not through that named organization just yet.
I will say though that part of the plan, a lot of the recommendations are around looking at things watershed from watershed perspective instead of just individual projects and streams and problems across the city. So looking at it from a watershed perspective, so that we can integrate all the needs of the watershed together in our solutions.
And this is Devin. I would just ask whoever had suggested that if they can fill us in on what they would envision that department to do. Like, are there services that it would perform, aspects of the watershed that it would look out for, things that it would maintain? I mean, if you have any thoughts on what it would do, then we could sort of circle back with all the city representatives and see and make sure all that's covered one way or another, because it may already be covered by the other departments.
Yeah, those are all great comments. Sid, I don't know if there was any follow-up to that question that's come through.
That was all the information that came through. I did ask the participant if they wanted to ask more directly and give the opportunity to unmute, and it looks like they have, but if they want to take the next few seconds to ask their question more directly, that'd be wonderful.
Excellent.
This is for Brian.
Can I ask my question?
Yes.
I meant the way I worded it, how about creating such a department as exists in Austin, Texas, among other cities?
Excellent, Brian. That's a great question. And I think as the CPT members had touched on, a lot of the disciplines that are represented on the core planning team and the One Water partners do have an emphasis on the watershed protection. So I think that's a great comment. If you go to the project website, denvergov.org/onewater, there's a survey that's live right now that this type of feedback would be excellent to put in there if you wanted to elaborate a little bit more, but we will absolutely note that as a potential outcome, that the community has commented on for the plan.
And I will say that as we get to the implementation phase of this, which we'll talk about in a bit, those types of ideas and opportunities to better align ourselves to achieve One Water strategies and goals is all on the table. So,
can I add one further thought?
Absolutely.
I would suggest no longer using the term wastewater.
I'm working on it, Brian.
Thank you.
No, I mean, it's, you know, it's what our, it's just what our charter calls the enterprise fund that funds a lot of the projects that we do in the city. But it does have it's such a negative connotation for water. I mean, it's not a waste, right? We don't want to waste any of it. So we are working on that. For example, we have a 6-year capital improvement plan that gets updated, you know, on a 6-year cycle to spend those funds on projects. And we always called it the wastewater CIP. You know? And this time we're in the process of updating it right now, and we're calling it the 6-year water plan, you know, Denver water plan. So we're getting there, but it's hard. And it's been a long time that nomenclature has been ingrained in the city.
Thank you.
And Dave and Miles, building on that as well, the Metro Wastewater Reclamation District very much aligned with that. Effective September 1st will be then known as the Metro Water Recovery rather than Metro Wastewater Reclamation District. Same line of thinking.
Yep, and that's really what the One Water Plan is all about, is that there is no wastewater. And Sid, what other questions? I think we've got time for one more.
That was actually the last question we have in the chat right now.
Got it. Perfect. And I thought I saw one coming in, and maybe
actually one
on the chat. It was, since Denver is at the Colorado headwaters, does the One Water Plan impact the amount of water available downstream through the river basin? So I'll defer to some of my technical counterparts here on this one. I would say really the plan is focused on, you know, doing more with what we have and not changing the amount in of water in the downstream uses. But Dave or others, please elaborate.
Yeah, those are, I mean, for example, I think, and Devin can probably speak to this much more eloquently than I can. Been involved in it all along. That's a big part of the water connection. But like the Chatfield Reservoir Reallocation Project, that's been 20 years that's been going on. So yeah, this plan cannot make those kind of big changes, but promoting those and opening those conversations for how we, you know, what we're going to do with more water. And of course, Denver Water can also, Jeff could probably chime in on this as well, because they're obviously very conscious of the needs.
Yeah, and this is Devin. So it is tricky to do all of this, keeping in mind Colorado's complex system of water rights. But in getting the funding for this plan, it was clear from the Water Conservation Board that does need to be absolutely considered. So respecting the complex system of water rights that we have, we still need to maintain flows in the river and ensure that the water continues to flow downstream to the communities that are relying on it and expecting it to continue flowing downstream. So, you know, it's not an easy task, but that's what makes it interesting, right? The hard is what makes it good, as my boss always likes to say. But no, we need to keep in mind the Colorado's water rights system and the need to maintain flows in the river. Absolutely. Thank you for asking the question.
It's a great question. And any other comments from the core planning team?
Yeah, this is Jeff Terrell from Denver Water. And I would say that, you know, given the complexity of water rights, all the issues going on in the Colorado River, it's also just important to remember none of the things we're talking about here within the One Water Plan, they cannot hurt what we're trying to do there. That being more collaborative and being more integrated with our approach is only going to help us manage these really long-term big risks we have coming at us.
Jeff, that's a great comment and a perfect segue into the next part of our presentation, which is really looking at the key components of the plan and some of the goals and strategies that will really get at some of the questions that we've heard tonight. So John and Inga, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, great. Thank you. So the draft One Water plan is available. It's up, posted on the website, the one that Miles just cited a moment ago, and there it is in words. So there's an opportunity to review that plan and provide us some feedback on what you see, both in the plan and what you're hearing here tonight. And we're going to go through some examples of the content there, certainly not page by page or topic by topic, but give you kind of a flavor of what's in the One Water plan to give you a guide and help you kind of understand what's in there to guide your reviews and comments. So the report is organized around 5 goals that we established in support of establishing One Water management in Denver, or more institutionalizing that. And you can see that the 5 goals are there from page 22 across to page 46. And we'll walk through what each one of those is. We start then also with some introductory material and close it out with how we measure success and what our water future looks like and where we go from here into implementation. So with that background, then the plan presents some high-level recommendations for each of these goals. And the first example we'll show on the next slide is for goal number 1, which is to promote institutional collaboration. And so on the first couple of pages there's some background information about what that really means. What does collaboration mean in terms of this One Water context and in terms of the context of Denver specifically, what some of the benefits are and so forth. And then you see on the second page spread there are some key recommendations. Those are built into strategies. Those are the numbered strategies that correspond to each goal. So 1.1, 1.2, those are all strategies associated with goal number 1 of promoting institutional collaboration. And then to the right of each one of those strategies, for example, to the right of 1.1, you can see there's recommendations A and B that support that strategy, all in support of this goal. And so let's look at some examples of that. Before we do that though, we have some case studies of One Water project opportunities to really give more context to this. And on the next slide, we show an example of that. In this case, if we can go ahead to go to the next slide, please. These case studies, there are 4 of them embedded in the report, and they give, again, some context to the planning that we're talking about here and show some kind of go-bys or examples of One Water planning and management in action. This is an example from the National Western Center campus, where we walk through some of the different features that are kind of unique and innovative with respect to water management on that campus, and perhaps can be inspirational for our future as well. We've got 4 different Spotlight project fact sheets, one on the Highline Canal, which is now being transformed into a stormwater management system, the National Western Center campus that's shown at left here, the South Platte River Needs Assessment, really visioning out what the urban river corridor can and should look like as we look out to the future, and also the Sun Valley Eco District, which is a really cool redevelopment project where there's all kinds of opportunities to manage things through innovative water management strategies like green stormwater infrastructure. There are some opportunities to use alternative water supply sources, so we're not using potable water for non-potable sources, and also some riverfront access opportunities there because of its location right up against the South Platte River. On the next slide, we'll go through the vision and goals. So that's really the core of the One Water plan, the vision that this group established, and we walked through this on an earlier One Water advisory group meeting and in some of the public facing materials on that website. But the One Water plan really is envisioned to provide a framework for implementing both holistic and resilient water management and land use strategies through collaboration and strong policies, promoting healthy watersheds in an equitable, economically, and environmentally beneficial manner. There's a lot to unpack there, but you can see some of these things like tying land use to water management. That's one of the things that's in the state water plan, and one of the things that Kevin helped us advocate for and bring into this through CV's perspective. But also all the other features that we really want to do, and really, again, institutionalizing a lot of the practices that happen now today, but maybe aren't part of our day-to-day business or aren't regular business practices for us. The 5 goals then that were established by the core planning team for this as we developed the plan were as follows. The first one already covered was promoting institutional collaboration. It's really at the heart of what we're talking about doing here, managing water between the different agencies and collaborating towards multiple benefits. And so to that end, goal number 2 is to implement multi-benefit projects and programs, taking the power of all these different perspectives and putting them towards these benefits that can be not just a single focus, but rather multiple benefits for the community, for the environment, and for how we manage water. A third goal is to foster community support. And so part of the way that we do that is through some of the education and outreach. It's very much aligned with the question that came in a while ago about some educational opportunities. So definitely aligned there. And goal number 4 is to increase resilience and climate change preparedness. We know that there are going to be increasing impacts from climate change on water management, and thus we need some additional resilience measures and strategies to help us be prepared for that and ready to handle that. And goal number 5 then is to implement integrated water management solutions. So really taking these different aspects of water that historically, as Dave pointed out, have been managed through siloed organizations and really focused efforts, and rather trying to integrate those, understanding that there is direct connectedness and interconnectedness between, for example, stormwater and water supply, and both in terms of water quantity and water quality. Now, supporting all 5 of these goals are strategies and recommendations. I just showed some examples there, the 1.1 to 1.2. Those were examples of the strategies, and then there are recommendations that support those. And so we're going to give some examples of those in a moment. I'm going to ask Dave and Sarah to walk through those, but let's dig into those recommendations a little bit deeper now. So again, we've got the pyramid there, the 5 goals up top, really supporting what we want to do for one water management in Denver, 24 strategies that support those 5 goals, and then prioritize recommendations behind each one of those strategies. And those recommendations are really specific actions that are going to help us implement each of the One Water strategies. Now with that, we also have a relative level of effort. The core planning team recognized that some of the things that are in these recommendations are going to be easier to do, some are going to be harder to do. And so we gave that a relative level of effort by rating them just qualitatively from 1 on the low end up to 5. And you'll see that in the report, how each one of these recommendations has that rating. We also had prioritized implementation. What's the relative importance of this and how fast should we be acting on this? And so the next way that we characterized these was how fast should these be addressed? And those are organized into 3 buckets, a near term, midterm, and long term, ranging from essentially immediate 1 to 3 years on into the longer term for things that are lower priority, or maybe are going to take a higher level of effort to achieve. And then the last part of this is designating agencies to really help us implement these and be on point for implementing these recommendations in support of the strategies. And so each one of the recommendations has a lead agency, and you'll see that in the examples that Dave and Sarah will share, and also key support agencies as well, to really help support implementation of this, but making sure that we know who's on point as the lead agency, and then pointing out some of the key support entities as well. And with that, I will ask Dave and Sarah to show us some examples associated with each one of the goals, starting with Sarah for goal 1. Sarah?
All right, so thank you so much, John. So as you stated, there are 5 goals within the plan, and we're just giving a few examples of the strategies and recommendations. So the strategies are there and the recommendations help achieve those strategies. So under goal 1, strategy 1.1 really identifies the need for us to strengthen communication, coordination, and collaboration between the city and county of Denver and all of the organizations that we mentioned earlier, which include the Mile High Flood District, Denver Water, Metro Wastewater, and the Water Connection. It's really important for us to continue that collaboration to understand how we are functioning and how we can continue to better coordinate moving forward. One recommendation to do that and to achieve that is to just ensure that we're meeting frequently. So we're recommending to schedule annual or biannual meetings for management representatives from those organizations and also representatives from the One Water Leaders team to get together and to make sure that we're collaborating on ongoing projects and as well as policy developments. And this can be done in probably the near term and is relatively low effort. All right, so for goal 2, one strategy is to look at creating a framework for comprehensive criteria to help identify and prioritize multi-benefit projects or water management strategies. We realize that there are a lot of projects out there that can be done, a lot of strategies that can be done, but we also need a way to help achieve those, which means prioritizing those and also identifying them. So one of the recommendations to help achieve that strategy is to just go ahead and develop that framework for evaluation. So we want to look at how we're evaluating these things coming up with that prioritization process. And with that, looking at how we can maybe assign an overall score or multi-benefit profile for One Water project opportunities. So in addition to that, through this evaluation process, we want to consider the social, environmental, and economic benefits and costs in that evaluation process. So that's something we'd like to consider moving forward as well. You can move it on to the next slide with Dave.
Okay, yeah. So we touched on this quite a bit during this call and throughout the process is the outreach component and educating the community, the broader community. So this strategy is meant to continue that effort. I can, over the last several years, almost 10 years now, I know from our perspective at the city, we've taken a really different approach to collaborating with the neighborhoods and the community at large. You know, the old days of typical engineers, we'd go in our corner and tackle a problem and come up with a solution, and we just show up and be like, hey, we figured it out. This is what we're doing, and you can thank us later. That's just not the way people want to be interacted with, and they want to be heard, and they want to understand, and they want to engage in the process, and we've really been doing that. So this goal is meant to continue that and continue to enhance it. Of getting that feedback from our neighborhoods because they know the issues better than we ever could. Go ahead, next. And then for goal 4, the climate change and what we do about it is new, right? It's well, climate change isn't new, but what we do about it is an ever evolving sorry, lost my train of thought. But it's evolving right now. It's continuing to mature, and we have to look for ways to fund these things. They're not your stereotypical thing. We're not just doing the same thing we've done before. So looking at both new funding streams for the city and our partners to do these projects that are going to help with the climate crisis, but also incentives for the private industry whenever they're redeveloping or developing something to incentivize them to do the right thing from a water perspective. And so it's good for them and good for us. And then I'm going to hand it back to Sarah for goal 5. All
right, so the final goal, goal 5, to implement integrated water management solutions. One of the strategies that's very important is to look at how we can provide additional room along the waterway corridors for restoration or multimodal purposes. And one way to achieve that is through this recommendation to update zoning to include regulatory policies developed by the One Water leaders to protect and create room along the waterway corridors. And we want to do this to make sure that we are doing it for flood mitigation and also environmental mobility and recreational benefits. So if you've been along the South Platte River, noticed, there may not be enough room, or development has maybe turned its back to it, or you wish there's more opportunities for that kind of multimodal benefit. This is a recommendation that would hope to achieve that. And it will take some time and effort to get there as well, but it's something that my department, Community Planning and Development, would look to lead as well. So that is the end of the goals and strategies and recommendations.
Okay, super. So I mentioned that we had spotlighted 4 One Water project opportunities. It's really a much longer list than that the groups are already identified. And it's a working list, intentionally a working list of more than 25 projects that really are opportunities to embody and implement this One Water management way of thinking and way of doing business between all the different agencies in partnership with the community. And so the One Water plan project opportunity, the roles and the criteria for what a One Water project opportunity is shown in the left here. It provides some real world context for this planning process. And as well as that, it gives some context not only for planning, but also for implementation, and a forum for the One Water leaders to help implement the One Water goals and strategies and recommendations. These are also projects and processes that can benefit from collaboration. You've heard a lot already about how we're trying to institutionalize this collaboration between agencies. It happens already day to day as we do our business, but really trying to make that more a regular part of our business and how we do our work in managing water in Denver. We also wanted these projects to be at a stage of development where these strategies can be implemented, meaning they're not already under design or already built and not 40 years out, but rather in a stage where they're still kind of moldable and provide opportunities to think differently and act differently in terms of how we work with water for these projects. They can also help us develop and refine different elements of the One Water plan. This will be, a written report. You saw the cover there and the draft reports out there available for review, but we anticipate that it's going to evolve and grow over time. And so having this context, having these this working list of One Water project opportunities to really plan around and help implement, it's going to help us then develop and refine these elements as well. And the last part of this is a list of initial collaboration opportunities or projects for the One Water Leaders Group. And you've heard us talk about the One Water Leaders. It's essentially an evolution and an outgrowth of the core planning team that you've heard from here tonight. Really, we're going to be responsible then for carrying this forward and implementing it. And on the right here, you see the 4 projects that are spotlighted in the report as examples. And many of these are more kind of further along that path of implementation, but they provide some good context and some good examples, again, perhaps some inspiration for what we can do for One Water management in Denver. So looking forward then, let's think about where do we go from here? If we know these are our goals, we've got the 5 goals on the left there, then how do we know to what degree we're achieving those or the pace we're achieving those with? And so for each of these 5 goals, we've identified a suite of indicators over on the right. And several of these indicators will map to, for example, goal 1, some map to goal 2. And so you can see there's a lot of crossover between them. But these are things like agency collaboration. How do we measure that as an indicator of our progress towards goal 1? Things like healthy urban waterways. You can see that's connected to a few of our goals here because that is kind of an outgrowth of a lot of the things that we want to do with this new way of doing business. All of that then also boils down to things like the resilience. That's one of the goals. Goal number 4 there is increasing resilience and climate change preparedness. So stormwater and flood resilience is one good way of measuring that. And we can develop over time more specific ways of measuring that as metrics and progress towards these goals. So with that background, looking ahead then, where do we go from here for implementation? And so that we're kind of following this path here, the plan partners will become the One Water Leaders Group, or the OWLs, if you will. And that OWLs group, we anticipate, will grow somewhat from not only the agencies, but also the individuals that are on the core planning team now into this broader OWL group. So the first step is to really confirm what that OWL group consists of, who's the participants, charter the group, really understand then what their what their responsibilities are, what they're charged with doing. There will be a combination, we anticipate, of structured meetings over time. You saw that as one of the examples on the goals there and the strategies, but also unstructured collaboration as well. This doesn't have to all happen in meetings. They're trying to institutionalize, again, these practices of collaborating both through kind of structured formats, but also unstructured ways of doing business. And all of this then will help that group drive those implementing actions and those recommendations that you saw a moment ago. And so that's kind of a quick tour and overview of what's in the plan and where the plan takes us into the future. And Miles, I think then we've got another discussion zone here lined up.
We do, John, and thanks to all of the plan partners for a very comprehensive executive summary of what's in the plan. I know we threw a lot of information at you in a short amount of time here, so we wanted to pause for any additional questions. And same routine, you've submitted it via the chat, or if you'd like to ask your question live, please raise your virtual hand and we'll unmute you. Sid, do we have any new questions?
We do, and we have a participant who I think is going to ask a question unmuted. So I'm going to unmute Perry here, and I can go ahead and speak.
Great, thanks, Sid. I'm inspired by One Water because I feel like the water in the West has been really challenged deeply by this historical separation of regulation of water quality and water quantity. I barely understand first in time, first in right. I'm not a water expert, but my question, I guess, is given the unification that is so promising about what you are doing, are you taking note of these deep assumptions that need to be challenged? For example, well, I'm just thinking there are artifacts from previous paradigms that are no longer constructive, and may be dangerous and irrelevant. And I'm just wondering if you're taking note of those and keeping them alive, because what you're doing is really hard.
Thanks, Barry. That's an excellent question, and you're right. There is a lot of history and context that just the power of this partnership in and of itself is significant. And I'd like to turn it over to the planning partners to talk a little bit about their personal experiences with some of those bigger philosophical issues that you bring up.
I'll go ahead and start. Yeah, I mean, we're obviously very aware of those the challenges in front of us on some of these efforts. Water rights are king out here, as we all know. But this is we see this as an opportunity where we get all these players and all the important people around the table to start looking at solutions. If we want to get to something where we want to be able to harvest rainwater, we can't do that right now because of water rights. We open that discussion again with the state CDPHE and our lawyers and others, and can we start like opening those, having those conversations of doing what's right long term.
So Dave, you're saying that when that bump in the road comes up, you're able to say, how do we work through it? I mean, because in the past that has been a wall, not a bump.
Yeah, right. But I can tell you that we've gotten good support on those things from people at the state that are the regulators. So it's still a challenge, and we know that whenever it gets legal people get involved when it comes to water rights, it can get really rough. But there's no reason to not try and go after it.
So I guess what I'm saying is, as you encounter and go after it, it'd be great for that to be cataloged, because I think those are the most important frontiers you're encountering.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and as John just went over on that implementation and the One Water Leaders Group, and that's going to be a big part of it. Is how do we operate? How do we communicate outside of the group and to the larger community, and what we document and how we do it, and those are all the things moving forward. Well, it's great. This plan is coming to fruition, and we're going to have a framework to guide us in there. I keep saying this is the beginning.
Yeah, it's such good work.
Yeah, well, thank you. We appreciate it.
Hey, and this is Devin. So if I can just jump in too, and I appreciate the question in the comments. There are sort of two areas for conversation, and one is what can we do within the system? I think there's a lot of value in looking at, in a perfect world, what could we change? Sure. But I think initially we can do a lot of good by just paying some attention to flexibility and maneuverability within the system that we have. That's a good place to start. But then as we're doing that, one of the goals truly of bringing all these partners together is to highlight what are the hurdles and acknowledge them and shine a light on them, if you will, without necessarily, creating a revolution. I don't know that that's the goal either, but it's about identifying what the hurdles and the challenges are and providing a platform and a venue and a forum for those conversations. That's what's been currently missing, I think, at least at the metro, at the city level, maybe. So those are just that's my 2 cents.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Ellen. I know, Sid, we've got a few more at least. So what's our next question?
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question asks, make sure that I'm phrasing this correctly. 1 second. So next question asks, is there a way to track in real time the achievement of the One Water Plan goals? So as an example, how many gray water systems have been installed, how many rainwater catchment systems have been installed, and how many gallons have been saved to date?
That's a really good question. And John, I think it hits at some of your metrics as well. And it also tees off the perfect segue from the previous conversation about that this is just the beginning. This is the framework that will allow us to develop more of these policies with the actionable teeth to them. But for John or for Dave, I don't know if there's any mechanisms in place to be quantifying those specific things to date.
Yeah, so I'll start, and then Dave, you can jump in if you like. Definitely, that's where we're headed with those indicators that I showed that really help us understand how well we are achieving those 5 goals. And so the next steps in the process include having the One Water Leaders Group or the OWL group really help flesh out specific ways or metrics, if you will, for measuring against those indicators. There's already a lot of great data out there, a lot of things that are measured by the city and the other core planning team partners here. And so how can we use that information in ways that kind of help us take pulse, perhaps from year to year or over time towards those, how we're doing on achieving those goals. Dave?
Yeah, no, that's a great summary of it. You know, like you said, it's the starting point. We got to walk before we run, and so that's going to be, you know, a standing agenda item for the OWL group is the, you know, what metrics, when, what do they look like, and coming to agreement on you know, what exactly they're measuring and how much, and then how that gets communicated to the larger community. But like John said, we have the starting point. We have all the ideas, and these are the indicators that we should be focused on.
And I'm seeing a couple other questions on metrics and measuring it as well. So I think this wraps all of those concepts together. And one point in particular that I want to address is the acknowledgement in the chat from one of our participants about the enormous deficit in water that the Colorado Water Plan does project. And as one of the largest water using regions in the state, doing more with what we have and then measuring that and building on the framework that we're developing here today is really what this is all about. So I think we've answered a couple of questions here within that one, but the theme that I'm hearing is that this is really the beginning and we need to keep at it. And Sid, what other questions do we have?
Yeah, we do have a very interesting one. One participant asks or says that they would be interested in hearing about whether the plan would address wastewater reuse and treatment to drinking water standards in addition to gray water recycling.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it kind of goes back to the theme of doing more with what we have and maximizing the use that we have with our water today. And the treatment of, you know, what we're trying to not call a wastewater to drinking water standards is a big concept in Colorado and really all of the West. So, you know, Dave, I don't know if you have any comments on the progress we're making on that front.
Yeah, I mean, water reuse and efficiency and conservation, all those things, right? We're not gonna you know, continue to engineer our way out of these problems. It's got to be a combination of all of them. Right? The water's just not there. We can't just keep making more reservoirs for more people. So that's a big part of it. But you know, I think Denver Water, Jeff knows way more about that than I do. We might have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think from a Denver Water's perspective, I think we are definitely collaborating with the state right now on regulation. And I think it's always a matter of looking at how the system works and what are the options for us for all of our drinking water and wastewater, well, no longer wastewater, whatever we're calling it, but all these water resources. So I think it is something that is definitely on the horizon that people are definitely looking at, but I think it's something that it may not be a near-term solution that we're going to look at, especially within the Denver One Water Plan, but it is something that is discussed within Denver Water, and it is frankly an option for our future.
And Miles, you're on mute, but while you fix that, I'll just point out that we do have a couple of indicators there about fit for purpose use of water resources, and you'll see that in the draft plan, and also water use efficiency. And so that plays right into it. There's already a very strong and robust non-potable reuse system in Denver, fed by Denver Water's recycling plant. And a lot of folks are looking into the potential to treat that water to potable standards and use it that way as well, which would really help increase that efficiency even further beyond what we're doing today. Examples of that, there are demonstration projects in 2018 and one going on right now down in Colorado Springs, where we're demonstrating the ability of that technology to meet drinking water standards from the reclaimed water source, and also working hand in hand with CDPHE towards developing those regs in support of that.
That great points, Alan. I think, as we look at the historic lows that we're seeing in some of our large reservoirs out west, in Lake Mead and Lake Powell, the importance of maximizing every last drop, and that includes direct potable reuse, is going to be something that not only here in Colorado, or certainly not just in Denver, but really the whole West, folks are going to be looking at that more and more. So I think the current situation that we're seeing is only going to create the innovation in that space. And Sid, I think we've got time for a couple more.
Yes, this actually, this last question, I think, speaks to what you were just saying. And it repeats here just a little bit. The question is, are you concerned that the goals that are set as mid and long-term goals are too far out? Great question. And John, I'll defer to you on that one as the architect of our goals.
Sure, and so those timeframes certainly can shift and evolve over time too as we get into it. But part of what we wanted to do is have kind of a practical phased implementation to not try and bite off everything all at once, or bite off more than the group could handle in implementation all at once. You can't do everything all at one time. So we tried to prioritize and kind of shift those out relative to those priorities. But are there opportunities to move some things around as maybe those priorities change or evolve? I think absolutely, right? That can be a living list as well. It doesn't need to be fixed the way that it's shown there. We just send some guidance for upfront planning, and where to start is essentially what we're trying to lay out there.
Yeah, and the way I'm looking at it is, we're just using those to tier them as, to prioritize and where we start, and not wrapped around, what years it says it would be, and things are, it's going to be fluid, and people are going to be, we're going to be able to move things up if it's the opportunities there, or vice versa. If it's not the right time, maybe it gets put on a lower tier for the time being.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main priorities of this plan is to provide that flexibility, knowing that there are going to be some low-hanging fruit and some early wins that are going to be easier to achieve than other things. And if those efforts can move more quickly within the framework of this plan, that's fantastic. And then there are other things that will evolve and change over time. So I think that adaptability into this framework that really builds the foundation for us to move forward is what this is all about. Any other comments from the core planning team on that question before we move on? And Sid, do we have any other questions?
No, we do not.
That's it. All right. Well, we're just over time, ever so slightly, but these are fantastic questions. And I promise we're nearing the home stretch here. So let's take a look at where we go from here in terms of next steps. And Dave, if you want to outline the roadmap going into implementation.
Yeah, for sure. So, what we're doing here at the One Water Plan is actually an implementation of the comp plan that was updated in 2019, Denver Right. Some of you may have been involved or aware of that, but it's our vision for 2040 for the city. And in addition to the overall comprehensive plan, we have transit, parks, bikes and peds. We have all these things, but you'll notice there's something missing there. There's no water plan. But it was identified in the comp plan to create a multidisciplinary citywide water plan. And that's exactly what we're doing. So it's really exciting that something that we put in the plan just a couple of years ago is actually happening and coming to fruition. So the next, and we see that as being the the leg for the water aspects for the city is where we have what we want the One Water plan to be moving forward. And I think John or Miles are gonna wrap it up here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dave. And I think that's really important context of how this citywide water strategy doesn't exist in a vacuum. It sits within that umbrella of plans. And this plan is by no means final. This is the draft plan for public review. In your chat, there's a link to the project website. You see it again here. Many of you should have it in your inboxes. If you're not getting the Denver One Water updates, you can go to www.denvergov.org/onewater, sign up for updates. You can review the draft plan there. It's posted to the website. There's also this comment form that you see here, and we're seeking input on really all types of comments on the plan. And I think the questions that have been asked here tonight are perfect examples of the type of feedback that we're looking for. I should connect this survey information that was presented really did inform the community input we got, and what we heard has been reflected into this plan and was central to our planning process. But we do want to make sure that we have an opportunity to seek all input on this draft plan. So go to the project website. As I said, it's denvergov.org/onewater. Download the plan, review the plan, and submit your comments. We're keeping that comment form open until the end of the month, until July 30th. And the comments that we receive will be summarized and incorporated into the plan finalization process. So Dave or John or any others, is there anything else that you would like to add regarding the type of input we're looking for at this point in the process?
That covers it from my perspective.
Perfect. Well, if you do one thing coming out of this meeting here tonight, it is go to the website, download the plan, let us know your thoughts. And we thank everybody for being here. We've got one last Q&A break, and I know we've answered a lot of questions already, and we're approaching the 7 o'clock hour, but I'm gonna filibuster here for just another second to let any additional questions come into the chat before we wrap it up tonight. Sid, how are we doing on the question front?
So far, no additional questions have come in since the last session.
Perfect. Well, with that, I'm going to turn it over to the members of the core planning team, and starting with Dave to adjourn us.
Can I actually say one thing right when I finish that?
Oh, of course.
A very great comment came in, and they said not a question, but they just said, thank you for the discussion. This is a great starting point. We need to move fast. We're at a massive risk with water, and and it may.
I think I heard that answers my question. I wanted to make sure that we weren't missing any of these great comments. And I want to pause for any additional. I know we had a couple last ones come in, and any other questions that we should address. I think I may have missed it with our recording pause.
No, other than questions, other than comments coming in. This is a great discussion, and it'll go to the survey. Nothing else has come in quite yet.
Perfect. Well, that's great. I think the feedback we got tonight was really helpful. Very, very good comments. We look forward to seeing the comments that you and the rest of the community submits on the plan. So with that, let's keep us on schedule. And Dave, do you want to adjourn us here tonight?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for your time and interest and your continued support moving forward as we get into implementation. We're really excited about it, and really proud of what this whole team has done to date. And like I said, it's just the beginning, and I think we have a bright future ahead of us from a water perspective. Thank you all.
Excellent. Thanks all. Have a good night.